UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the United Federation of Podcast Network. I'm your host for today, Justin, and joining me are my co-hosts Brandon and Chrissy. So, Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. You'll have to forgive me if I'm chewing while we're eating. I'm just eating this marvelous Earth dish called pizza.
Oh, can you describe what is that? I'm not familiar with it.
It's got like this sweetie fermented tomato sauce with this, other things on it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I see what's happening here.
Yeah, we do have a special guest, as you could hear, that we'll introduce soon. But Chrissy, how are you doing? I love those amazing threads that you have on that you've just gotten in an amazing shopping spree on an alien world.
Yeah, isn't that fun how we can do that? And, the Federation's a moneyless society, but at the same time, they have to give us something so we can function on other worlds. So, it's good.
Yeah, it is good. Okay, so actually, before we get into our topic, which is going to be talking about a new Deep Space Nine book called Revenant, and we have the author here, Alex White, but before we get into that topic, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons who make our show possible, particularly our associate producer, David Willett. Listeners, we'd love to add your name to that list, which I'm also a part of, and you can do that with your monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/UFPEarth. All right, so we do have author Alex White, who has written a new Star Trek Deep Space Nine book. So, Alex, welcome to Infinite Diversity.
Hi, thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here, and, really great to have someone on who is a new Star Trek novelist. Of course, you've written other novels, but I just wanted to start out by asking, because I'm always interested in this, how did your career in writing start?
Wow. Well, my debut novel was a book called Every Mountain Made Low. And that was the fifth book that I'd written, so that ought to give you an idea. Like that was okay. I was actually lucky. That's kind of low. Normally, I know a lot of people have written 10 books before they sell one to the major publishers. But it took about 8 years to find an agent. I mean, it's sort of the thing. I always wanted to write a novel. I'm going to write a novel. I wrote a novel. What do I do with it?
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's when the journey starts, is when you finish that first book. It feels like forever. It's like a whole saga of your life, and then no one wants it, and it's not very good. And that's just something you have to accept. And that's how, that's my journey in writing started as ignominiously as most writers' journeys do.
Okay. And about how long ago was that?
Oh, gosh. So the first book, was it 2016? Was when the first book came out, and then the Salvagers started in 2018, along with Alien: The Cold Forge. So,
okay.
So I've been at it a little while, certainly been writing for my whole life. It's one of those things where every writer always says that, how long have you been writing? Forever.
Yeah. And so now you have a Star Trek novel. So tell us about kind of your history with Star Trek, like how you got into it and what it means to you.
Sure. Well, this is sort of well documented, but my sister and I were watching Star Trek on one of those old marathons. I don't know which one it was, but it was the era of those old scientists. And
I can tell you've been watching Lower Decks.
I love Lower Decks. Everything except the Pac-Man,
nice.
But that's a different story.
Okay.
We're all on the same page so far, I think.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like them, but everything else is cool. That's it. That's my beef with Lower Decks. It's the only beef. Everything else is awesome. I love that show. I watch the crap out of that show. But yes, we were watching those old scientists. And my sister and I, I'm sure we started on like somebody riding Spock like a horse or whatever. But, we it was funny and terrible when we first switched it on. And we were laughing and we were making fun of it. But then we watched the next episode, and we were laughing, and then we weren't making fun of it as much, and we watched the next episode, and it got us.
Okay.
It was so goofy to us at the time because we were such little snobs, but the stories were good, and the it was interesting, and the problems were interesting, and and it had all these solutions that I never considered, like maybe the murderer is a malevolent extra-dimensional entity that possessed Scotty. Did you consider that?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. It was really mind-altering. And so around the same time was when Deep Space Nine really launched. It was coming. It was at the end of Next Generation when I got into it. And, the Star Trek big anniversary came to my hometown. And so, like, all these things happened to me at, like, almost the exact same time. There's no chance for me to not get into Star Trek, really. It's embarrassing.
No, it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Clearly it worked. It's cool to... I wish I could go back in time and tell that kid, like, hey, it's cool, you're going to write a book about this. It's going to be awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you about writing this novel in particular. So if you've got a couple books under your belt, and does your agent reach out to CBS to say Alex wants to write a Star Trek novel, or does CBS come to your agent and say we want Alex to write a Star Trek novel?
It's the latter.
Okay.
Nice.
The thing with a lot of these kinds of things is if you come into it and you're the one that's asking, it's often harder to get the spot. But if you're sort of copacetic to that writing style and it's something that you truly love, then, well, what happened was the editor-in-chief at Gallery Books at Simon & Schuster, they were like, Ed was like, we got to get Alex after reading The Cold Forge, which was my Alien novel. Mm-hmm. And so there's your inside scoop. There it was. That's probably the answer to the question you were actually asking. Ed read The Cold Forge, and he really liked it, and he said, this person would really make a great Star Trek writer. Mm-hmm. So, and I get invited to write for tons and tons and tons of IPs, and they're like huge ones that I love, and I can't take them all, and it feels awful, by the way, because you struggle your whole life for that first book deal. You do everything you can. You would die to get on that Star Trek stage, and then you get books that are just whizzing past because your life is upside down, and you've got because every writer has two jobs, or not every writer, but I know I do. And so yeah, but I do occasionally dabble in IP work, and usually they come to me. Mm-hmm. The only you never know who's going to show up at your doorstep, and it's funny because they'll say, like, we know you're a fan. Would you sign an NDA so that we can talk to you about it? And I'm like, when do you want this book? And they're like, exactly at the same time you're writing another book. And
Yeah.
Like, oh, what did I miss? And they wouldn't tell me. And then eventually I figured out it was Cowboy Bebop.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's just interesting to know that they're just kind of looking out there and seeing, and then saying, hey, there's an author that we want.
Yeah. Well, what they want is reliability along with an original voice, and that's a really hard combo to get, especially at the price that they're usually asking. Mm-hmm. I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but tie-ins don't make more than originals. They make about half as much on average, with about half as much time to do them. Mm-hmm. And so when you participate in that, you're really saying, like, I believe that I can bring something to Star Trek that's gonna reflect on the rest of my writing. That I believe that I'll write a Star Trek book that would make you want to read my other books, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Before we get into the Star Trek, I do have to ask about the Alien book. I haven't read your Alien novel, but I'm a huge Alien fan. And I've just found recently that there's some stuff out there. Like there was a Titan book of like short stories of Alien and whatnot that I read. And it was I don't think it was Bug Hunt. Maybe it was Bug Hunt. Yeah, it was about the all the military end of it. So maybe it was Bug Hunt. There was that one, and then I found a Planet of the Apes one too that was really fantastic, with a bunch of short stories. But can you tell me a little bit about your alien novel and where it takes place and what the plot is of that one? Because I'm
Oh,
curious.
sure. Well, I have two alien novels, and they're highly linked. They're not required reading. Like, you don't have to read one to read the other, but they are heavily linked. The first one is called The Cold Forge, which is about a craven corporate auditor who is sort of up against a terminally ill geneticist. And if that sounds boring, their office drama turns really hot really fast when the aliens get out. And I started writing this when I started working in I was doing a lot of work in Silicon Valley, and I was meeting all these tech entrepreneurs, and they all sort of they were highly effective people, very organized, interesting, highly effective people that were all a little bit like they had a different set of priorities than the rest of us, and it doesn't involve taking care of each other. And one of the things that I started thinking about was like, what if Burke was actually good at his job? And that was sort of how the Cold Forge came about, because Burke doesn't make a single good decision the entire movie. I mean, I'm sorry, he makes lots of self-interested decisions, but whoever promoted that guy also needs to be fired. So he's very much a Peter Principle kind of character. So I wanted to have somebody who's effective in that scenario, and having an effective character in that scenario, somebody who's willing to push the boundaries in that kind of way, is really frightening. And I like how people always like to call him a psychopath, and I'm like, you work with this guy, you just don't know it. If you haven't figured out who it is, maybe look in the mirror in some cases. And then the second book is it's about an American contracting team that goes to commission a colony, except that colony is a subsidiary of the Iranian state, and so there's a whole lot of political tension and paranoia sort of going into this. If you've ever worked in an international scenario where you might not necessarily be in the most friendly territory, and so there's all this paranoia and all that stuff, and then the aliens get out, right? So yeah, there's always but the facility is like a web server. Like they're not. It's not an alien developmental laboratory. They're a database management solutions company, and so one of the things I love, and you'll see heavily in my aliens books that you won't see in my Trek book, is that they're very much about office life. If you work in an office, they're books for you. Even if you have a bunch of crappy coworkers, they're probably still books for you. I've worked in warehouses. I know how it is. So yeah, Aliens is really, it's the sci-fi setting for people who have jobs. It's like the opposite of Starfleet. Like people who are worried about money, Alien. People who are not worried about money, Starfleet.
Yeah.
Yes, awesome, excellent. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So tell us, going back to the Star Trek novel, so did they approach you and say, hey, we want you to write a Deep Space Nine novel, we want it to be about Jadzia, or is that something you chose?
That was so wild. It's the only thing I would have chosen, because Star Trek is a lot. I don't know if you guys know this, there's a lot of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. We intimately know there's so much of it.
There's like 900 and something novels. Have any of you read all of the novels?
I haven't read
them
all,
but I'm past halfway. I've read a lot of them, but there's a lot. Yeah,
I'm just a drop in the bucket to you. This is like a major accomplishment for me.
Well, no, I've just made it my obsessive task to read them all. I've been doing it continuously for over 7 years now. But anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Justin's more vocal
if you did
about
well
it.
And you've read more than half of them, I feel that's pretty good.
Yeah. Justin's more vocal about it on Twitter and stuff. Like I don't write the reviews and stuff, but I'm doing that same goal, and I'm over half for sure too. And like,
I had no idea that we're in this competition.
It's not a competition.
Oh yeah, she's gonna get there first. Wait, no bets.
But
no
yeah,
competition.
This shelf here is all Star Trek books here, and then I got two more that you can't see over here that are all Star Trek novels.
Incredible.
So yeah,
that's incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah, so there's a lot of it. But did they approach you and say, hey, this is the series and the character we want?
That's exactly right. I was like, I really wanted to do a Jadzia Dax book. That's the only thing I would have picked, really. And I don't think I ever said that on Twitter or anything. And then they came to me and they're like, "We want you to do a Star Trek book," and I'm like getting ready to say no because I haven't fully caught up, and I'm I feel like a bad fan, and.
Hey, as long as you love Star Trek, you're a good fan. It doesn't matter if you've seen it all.
Thank you. Yes. That's really heartening because there's a lot of it.
Well, there are other people that think otherwise, I know.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure. And somebody's head listening to this podcast just exploded when they realized that I didn't watch the entire every series. So, because that's not required to write a book. It's not. Books are about very few characters, and you don't even have to watch every single season of a show to really start to understand the temporal context of a character. Now, I do suggest you watch more than one season. That would be smart because you need to know where that character's going. And luckily, I've watched all of Deep Space Nine. But but that was it. I mean, that was my Star Trek. And a lot of people are Next Generation people or Voyager people. And Deep Space Nine people, it's always funny because they're always like the ones who really enjoyed Mallrats. They're all like in the same. They're the theater kids out there smoking. And you're like, oh, that's the Deep Space Nine fans.
That's funny. Actually, for Brandon and I, Deep Space Nine is our favorite. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm a TNG/DS9. It depends on the day, but
you got that Worf crossover.
My Bajoran symbol tattoo and my Cardassian symbol tattoo.
Nice.
Yeah,
I'm in good company here. Like I said, I love it. And so, I was getting ready to say no. And they're like, how about a Deep Space Nine Jadzia Dax book? And I'm like, you guys know that series is 20 years old, right? Like, this is cool. But I'm excited. I can't believe you guys are still making these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting because for a while, after the show's finished, I think for like a little bit they would do some that would take place during the series, but there was a big focus on the ones that take place after the series for like the last 20 years. Yeah. And they've kind of just wrapped that up this year, and now they've started to get more back to ones that take place during the show, like Deep Space Nine. We got a TNG novel that takes place during the series. So I think they're going to be doing a lot more of this. But this Deep Space Nine novel, I think, is one of the first ones that actually takes place during the show in, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 years.
Here's what's funny is they did give me unlimited Dax choice. Being totally honest, it was like, which Dax do you want? But I mean, Jadzia is my Dax. Sorry. Ezri, she's great. Ezri's great. It's just Jadzia was my Dax. So, it didn't even occur to me to set it after the show. I don't know what it was about that. I like working.
Well, if you wanted Jadzia, it's hard to set it after the show. But
it's Star Trek.
I know. Yeah, you would have the big novel to suddenly bring her back many years later.
Right, exactly. The search for Jads. Yeah, I don't do Resurrection actually. So like, if I'm working in a series that has a resurrection, like Star Trek, you won't find that in my book. Okay. Now that means I'm probably never going to kill one of your characters. But if they ever gave me license to kill off one of the characters, that person's staying dead.
I understand that.
I can see that.
I can understand that.
So if you had license to put it anywhere in the run of the show, then how did you choose season 4?
Well, so seasons 1 and 2 feel a little not awkward, but it's sort of like a gazelle's first steps. You're like, that's going to be a graceful animal one day, and then, season 3, it's really starting to heat up. And then season 4 is where Jadzia is between this, she's past the immature Bashir storyline, where you can tell the writers sort of like tested out the chemistry and they're like, what are we doing? We don't really know. What I really appreciate about that is that the way that those characters remain friends, and he's not a creep most of the time.
Eventually.
he's less creepy
most of the time.
Yeah.
Right. There are times when he and Quark and one other person, who's the other person who's in love with her, would go moon over her at the bar. And you're like, grow up. But other than that, most of the time though, what I really like is she's sort of out of that relationship. She's about to have a relationship that's life-altering with Worf. And so she has these sort of semi-romantic feelings for these two characters, which I really enjoy working in that space. And of course having, and the dynamic between her and Kira on the show is so strong in that section as well that you really can't leave it out, And so for me, that fourth season just has everything that I need up in the air. And I'm super free to just grab any plot element and work with it. If I wanted to hint at the coming war, I could do that. If I wanted to throw in a changeling, it's not too early, but it's not too late. There's lots of stuff like that where I just felt like there was a lot of room to work. And then once it was like, well, Worf's new to the station in season 4, I was like, there it is. I think this is it.
Mm-hmm. It was such an interesting addition for Jadzia, and I think the relationship with her and Worf was so perfect because of the history that Dax had with Klingons and whatnot. It just seemed like such a natural progression that she would be attracted to Worf because of all that she knows about Klingon culture.
Mm-hmm.
They really set it up. I mean,
it was almost like it was planned.
Without meaning to. Yep.
Yeah, right. I don't for 1 minute think they meant to, but they really set it up. And it's funny because it's these little trivias about the characters from early seasons that later become so meaningful when you have Worf's current episode with the Chadij. Where it's like we're going to start developing the crap out of the Klingons. And suddenly it's like, well, which one of our characters are established Klingon experts? And it serves kind of everybody's purpose, except for Roddenberry. He didn't like developing the crap out of the Klingons.
I got to say that with setting it where you did set it, one of my favorite moments in the novel, because of where it leads to and where we know it goes, is when Jadzia is talking about the genetically altering and whatnot, and she looks at Bashir. And you just kind of described that he kind of goes dark, right, at that moment there?
Right. Yeah. He's about to confess. He's totally about to tell her, he's going to spoil that plot line right there.
So
walks in.
It's fun because you can pop those things in a book, right?
Yeah.
That takes place then. So
yes, and it's funny because those things aren't interesting or funny. You're never going to believe that that Bashir would nail somebody in the face with a pad on reflex. Unless you'd watch the show, and so if I'd put all that stuff in there and you'd somehow manage to consume it in order, you'd miss it all.
Yes,
and that's one of the beautiful things, by the way, about working in tie-ins and working in especially novels where you can sort of do it atemporally, is that you can make all of these sort of meta references. And this is true in Alien as well, where, in my second book, the Colonial Marines, they roll in and they're super prepared and they know exactly what they're doing. And of course, we as readers are like, well, that's usually bad. Right? I've seen this series. I've seen Jurassic Park. I know what happens to cocky people. And of course, I'm going to play with that. I know you know that. I know that you're thinking that. That's why I'm going to write something else. And this is a great example of that. There's, knowing that Jadzia is going to die, there are a lot of passages in there that are really, they're all about comforting mourning people. That's not Jadzia that I'm trying to comfort. It's us. She's going to die. And the whole time it's like she knows so badly she would love to get old and all this other stuff. Because I don't think that I think that character was kicked off the show way too badly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was a whole bunch of unfortunate stuff behind the scenes that led to that. Yeah.
Nobody needs to relitigate that, I guess.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen What We Left Behind, the post-series documentary from a few years ago,
they talk about that a lot.
That clarifies a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the industry always does sort of have an impact on shows, and people don't always recognize the external forces that a lot of these creators are facing. You know, in my case, I'm really lucky. You know, the only real notes I got back were very early on, from at least from CBS. They were Paramount. You know, they were like, you can't just have all these explosions every time. You know, if you see a lot of my other books, I'm pretty heavy on the action, and so I was like, okay, we'll back it off. Mm-hmm. You know, and so that was when it took on a far more Raymond Chandler-y kind of tone. So
yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a unusual thing for Trek books, but you actually had a title for each chapter that, of course, moved into hinted at what was coming. Is that something? Mm-hmm. Forgive, I have not read your other books, but is that something you do, or was that something that this particularly lent itself to, or what made you?
I love doing that. I don't know why I like to do it. It's sort of my thing. Yeah, everybody
justify
does
yourself.
It's noticeable because it doesn't tend to happen in a lot of Trek books, especially more recent ones.
That's interesting. I'm surprised they didn't tell me to take it out. That's interesting. Yeah, they didn't hit me up about anything to do with house style.
And I thought it was interesting because I'd read that and I'd be like, okay, I'd read the chapter, and then after it I'd go back and be like, okay, now I get what that title was supposed to tell, and it helped to reinforce it. So there's something I don't have to have a chapter title, but there is something that I like about it. I think one thing, things that's more common in Trek novels is section titles. It'll be like part 1 this, and then for those block of chapters instead of on each chapter. I thought it was an interesting stylistic choice, but I did like it.
With those, I'm always trying to come up with something that you feel like you understand, and it will be recontextualized at the end. And that, you know, and so you hopefully, you know, you going into it, it sets some kind of expectation, because I don't want a title that has you, for instance, you know, soft and fluffy, and then I come in with the Red Wedding, unless that's the point, you know, but like, you know, I need to sort of set your expectations and then work with that.
Right.
Yeah. So
you don't want to call it like happy endings and then everybody dies by the end of the chapter.
I mean, again, unless that's exactly what you're going for. It's sort of a, did you need to do that? You can't do that every time, because then the reader's just like, I don't trust anything you say.
Like the Red Wedding,
Do you write the chapter first and then come up with the title for the chapter, or are you like, okay, I know where this chapter's going, so this is what I want to call it?
Oh yeah, no, I know where the chapter's going. Usually with my tie-in work, actually, honestly, with all of my work now, I make a pretty thorough master plan. I don't necessarily stick to it, because, you know, you have two weeks to 2 months to figure out your master plan. You know, you have 4 months to a year to write your novel, depending on who's contracting it. If it's tie-in, it's 4 months. You know, it's like you're going to think of better ideas in that time. And you need to be willing to depart your plan, and you're not always going to be able to get studio approval.
Yeah, from all that I've heard, you have to submit, you know, an outline of what's going to happen, and then they approve it before you get going, right? So
if you make a change, you're kind of betting on it, right? You know, especially if your change is like something that's cascading, it's going to be... So, like, the whole ending, they were like, we're just...
Oh, let's not get into the ending yet.
Yeah. They were like, we're eager to work with you. And that's fine. And, like, I had to do a lot more development on that one before I would even start it. So.
Okay. But actually, so Brandon, did you have another question before we get into the details of the book?
Yeah. So you just said that it took you about 4 months to write this. That's about the time frame that you have.
Yeah.
When did they approach you, and when were you writing this book?
So I was writing it between January and April of last year. And they probably would have approached me... I think we probably finalized somewhere close to like February of 2020.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, well, this sounds like a brag, but you have to get on my schedule. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just I have people I promised things to that have lawyers.
Yeah.
So it's nothing personal. Yeah. It's just I don't want to pay lawyers. I'd rather turn in books.
Yeah. So with tie-in fiction then, so if you said you read it and you were done about April or so, is like a publication in December, is that a normal time frame, or is that quick, or
That's
is that
pretty
long?
fast.
That's pretty fast.
Well, for tie-in, that's normal. For an original, that's pretty quick. Originals have sort of 12 to 18 months production cycle. And so for me, I'll write something, in like 6 months, and then it'll be about 8 to 10 months of production probably. So, and I'm not involved with most of that. It's sort of, they have to submit things at a certain time, and buyers have to get ready to put them on shelves, and logistics and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's been great talking about these preliminary things, but definitely want to get into some of the details of the book. And just a warning to listeners, we will be getting into spoilers.
Oh,
you should definitely check out this new Deep Space Nine book, Revenant, before you listen to it. Or if you don't care, you can keep listening. But this was your warning. So do you have something?
Yeah, before we get into this here, because it's not really relevant to the book, but based on this novel here, though, Alex, I think it's safe to say that you like, really rich desserts. Would that be a fair thing to say?
I have a story about that. Do you want me to tell before the
tell us.
Before the spoiler section? Okay, here. So I actually am chronically ill. I have really bad allergies. I can barely eat anything. So most of what I eat, I have to sort of know where everything came from. So I have to cook my own vegetables and food and stuff. So I can't go to any restaurants. But this is something that has gotten worse with age. I was always in pain as a kid, but you can kind of tough it out. Well, I'm 40, and at some point, my life was like, no, I don't think so. And so you start going, well, if I keep eating the food that I love, it's going to kill me. And this factors into Cold Forge a lot, which is funny because I'm only starting my chronic illness journey at that point. I had no idea what I was in for or how much I was going to be similar to that character. And I write, and over the years, you'll see in my novels, lots of food. Everybody reviewers are just constantly like, there's so much food in your novels. and it's so realistic, people are, I write food fiction because I can't eat it. And I have an eidetic memory for meals, especially, if you had an important life event and we were eating, I know what we were eating. And I remember it well, cool. And I probably could tell you where it was and what was special about it, and so I have all these meals in my dreams, and I sort of have to write them. And because food is such a powerful bonding experience, it's us choosing to be alive together, right? It's such a beautiful ritual that we don't think about all the time. I think about it all the time. Business is done at the dinner table. I don't get invited there because I can't go. And so those kinds of things, those are absent nostalgia for me. And I love putting food in there because I miss it so badly.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
No, that's really interesting. No, thank you for sharing. And sorry that
no.
You have a difficult journey, but
I don't mean to turn this into a sob story. That is a long way to say your mind has a remarkable capacity to remember really good food.
Yeah. I think CBS needs to come to you with another Deep Space Nine Jadzia novel where food is like the secret weapon and the key to the entire plot.
Yes. I love it.
Or the Neelix cookbook too. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Somebody is actually writing the second cookbook of that, actually. But anyway.
Wow. All right.
Of Captain Sisko's gumbo recipe.
Yeah.
I love the food stuff. I know that some people it doesn't necessarily appeal to everybody, but I love that stuff because food is so important in relationships and family and all the rest of that. And you get this feeling of friendship and a bit of family sitting around the table while they're discussing whether or not they're going to eat this pizza. And it's just, it's wonderful.
Well, and it's funny for me. I actually loved reading it as well, but I'm vegan, so there's a lot of the stuff in there that I choose not to eat. But I still enjoy the bonding that it gives for people, the creativity that people have in the food that they like. That's
all the proteins were replicated. So. I just want you to. Somebody replicated the proteins, and then they made them. See, that's the secret to good replicator food.
Okay, yeah. When we have replicators in the future, I guess it'll be easier choices.
You don't replicate a cooked steak. That's not a good way to do it. Replicate a raw steak and then you cook it. See, so it's no
I think
animal.
Chakotay even ate replicated meat there.
I think so. Yeah,
he did.
All right.
There was discussion of that.
When we get there in the future,
if I have a replicator versus so that replicator can put out a filet mignon just fine, or I can disrupt an entire ecosystem with a huge commercial agriculture operation. No one is going to choose anything but replicated meat because it's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, hopefully the power source for that replicator also doesn't disrupt something else.
I'm sorry, Klingons
in the Star
will
Trek
else.
future it doesn't. But
well, it's
Klingons will be like,
yeah,
no, there's not enough real blood in this. I know the difference. And we're going to be like, you can't taste the difference. I can taste the difference.
Yeah, they totally can. So, okay, let's get into the details of the book. So, you knew this was going to be a Deep Space Nine novel about Jadzia. And I think, again, listeners, we're getting into spoilers, but I think it's interesting that you have these new characters. There's Etam Prid and Nemi Prid, and Nemi is someone that was important for, encouraging Jadzia to, keep going even after she washes out of the initiate program, but Nemi has all these troubles, and so kind of over the course of the novel, there's this whole, kind of underground dark thing going on with symbionts. So I just wanted to have you talk about that a little bit and how you came to that.
Sure. Well, there are a lot of times when you can feel like somebody's trying to rescue you and they're really trying to take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. And the story inside of Revenant is about people taking advantage of other people. Mm-hmm. That's really sort of the core theme, the way that Curzon took advantage of, his field docent status, the way that, Etam sort of takes advantage of his privilege. There's everybody's happy to sort of manipulate people when they're vulnerable. And Etam doesn't really do that on camera, but you can tell that he has in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he'll use his power any way in which he wants to.
Right. Exactly. Like whenever push comes to shove, the very first thing he goes to is power, and that's a problem with a lot of the characters that are sort of described here, Elta and Duran as well, and so Nemi is a character who deserves a good turn of fate, and instead she gets ensnared and destroyed. And that's the start of the book, because that's the situation that a lot of people have faced, where what seems like salvation is just a trick from the bank, or your hospital bill finally came due, or there are all kinds of ways in which you get punched when you're vulnerable and you didn't see it. In fact, maybe we're more trusting because you were vulnerable. And so Revenant is about that kind of gaslighting. And in particular, the way that institutions would do it. I liked that the show really covered a lot of that with the Symbiosis Commission. They were like, it has a lot of problems. And they did sort of hint at one problem, but they didn't go very far beyond that, because I just don't think we got enough Jadzia episodes, which is why it was awesome to write the book. Mm-hmm. But there are so many issues with the way in which the Symbiosis Commission potentially functions that don't have anything to do with money. They're not things that are fixed by our futuristic Starfleet income.
Well, but it does have to do with limited resources. The symbionts are limited, and not everybody can get them, right?
It's true. In a post-scarcity galaxy, this is not post-scarcity. Yeah. Right, and so now that we have a limited resource, how do we accord it?
Although they seem to, in the course of the book, they seem to have figured out how to clone symbionts, so it might potentially be a solution, although it's bad. Yeah, I know, you're not supposed to do that, yeah. It leads to some bad situations.
That was a really fascinating aspect of the story, was the cloning of it, because, when we got that episode in Season 3 where they found out that basically half the population was capable of hosting a symbiont, and you find out, like, that completely turns the whole, process of becoming joined up on its head, right? It flips it all up. And so what do you do with the people now who can't have a symbiont? Well, this is a very fascinating way, because that was the concern, was that these symbionts were always going to become a commodity to trade. And as the book was going along, I'm like, where are they coming up with these other symbionts? Like, like where are they coming up? So, like, I was guessing the whole time. Yeah, because I was guessing that they were like, they would kill off somebody on purpose and then just store their symbiont, and they were like kind of talking about that in the book and whatnot. And then when it finally got to where it was, and then it was just cloning the one symbiont, I'm like, holy smokes, this is crazy.
And that was kind of terrifying too. It's like, okay, there's a whole bunch of Vesses, because it comes from this Vess symbiont. There's like hundreds of them. But I mean, also, I think as the title alludes to, these are people where the host body is really dead, but the symbiont is kind of running the show, which is also kind of horrifying. There's like this kind of zombie characteristic to it. I thought you really did well, like kind of the horror aspects of it, because as soon as I found that out, I was like, whoa, this is pretty awful. Like, this symbiont is knowingly animating this kind of dead host to do its bidding. So, like, was that kind of what you were going for? You wanted something that had a lot of horror aspects to it?
Well, I wasn't going for something necessarily horrific. I was actually going for something I would say more noir. And so I wanted something, again, because Dax is such a good character. Like, she's so wholesome. I love her so much. And like, she doesn't do things out of ill will. She does things always out of the best intentions. And unfortunately, if it was, let's just be heroic, the story, I think she'd pass that with flying colors, like maybe too easily. It just felt boring. And so I wanted to have sort of a greater evil for her to face that felt visceral and personal. Because there are so many galaxy-destroying things in Star Trek. There
are.
Literally, God could show up and be like, "I challenge you," and and so where does a character who is so unequivocally good fit into those kinds of stories? And so what I wanted to have her was confront something that was going to shake her. And she's such an unflappable character, I really needed to go pretty dark.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
I also don't think, I think there's an evil symbiont in the Jadzia short story collection. I think.
Well, the evil symbionts in that, I think, are the neck aliens from Conspiracy.
Oh, the parrots.
Dang it. Okay, well,
yeah. Which they're like
cousins. Right about that.
Oh, well, then I guess I'm original.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you see more in Deep Space Nine where there's an evil host that kind of wants a symbiont. Like I think Varad was like that in one of the episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine how messed up you have to be like, it's an optional heart transplant. I mean, it's optional for me. You still need that heart. I just want it.
Yeah.
But it adds to that. It adds to what was built upon. The novel adds to what's been built on in the show with Vera Dax and Joran, right?
Yeah, he even gets mentioned. Varad does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the first example. Like they've talked about it, and the symbiont changed. Like the Trill changed quite a bit from the host in season 4 of Next Generation. But like once we started to develop the culture and whatnot, seeing Vera Dax, seeing somebody so desperate to get a Trill that they're willing to kill for it, it just shows how far some of these people are willing to go in order to get one. And so for people to turn that into take advantage of people, like you told a story of where one symbiont was trying to take control, but like that could be turned into a whole other thing, right? Where you're getting money from people and then you're just killing them because you don't actually have one, or like whatever. You could turn it into some other story like that too.
Every character who gets taken advantage of wants something more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So Nemi gets taken advantage of because she wants to be joined more than anything. Same with Jadzia. And Duran, he wants to be the greatest composer of all time. And so that's why he's dying to be joined. But whenever you want something more than anything and someone else knows that, they have your lever. They can operate you like a puppet.
Yeah.
And this book is very much about that.
Yeah.
Since
Chrissy, go ahead.
Since we brought up Duran, I really love how I was very sympathetic for him for a long time in the book. And you're trying to figure out, you're like, okay, well, we know he's a murderer. Okay. And yeah, he's being really obnoxious about not getting the symbiont that he wanted. And then traveling that with him, and then finally when he does commit the murder, and he's like, "Oh, that was fun." I just
it's like it's pretty sick, actually.
But
I loved how you did that. It's not really a question, maybe
it is, but at the same time, like he's being tortured
Yeah.
by Elta, right? Like so, there's like this push and pull, and I think Duran is a really fascinating character because it's somebody that, yes, they're a murderer, but in this book you find out like more of the circumstances of what happened to him, and it wasn't what he thought it was, and he doesn't want to really merge with Dax, but then like he enjoys killing people, and like there was all of this like interesting complexity to it. And Duran's of course a character also in season 7 with Ezri that's like helping her to find a murderer, like there's all these nuances to it, and I love that you kind of added to that nuance, because I, like you, Chrissy, I was like, okay, I could feel for him, but man, he's messed up also.
I wish I could have totally reinvented Duran, but Field of Fire already existed. And see, that's the season 7 episode you're talking about. And that one was where I was just like, okay, well, he's clearly got a strong characterization. And, when he's in Cisco as well, he's very, hello, I'm Hannibal Lecter, And, and I feel like it's because they just didn't necessarily know what to do with him at the time. He's such the fact that he exists is the episode. Like what caused him to do that, and they give you sort of, well, he was kicked out of the program, and that's decent, but they sort of try to pin it on, well, he's crazy, and between that and the Packlids, I think we need some sensitivity training over there. But because that's not how people work. Nobody just murders anybody, even if they are very unstable. In fact, they're more likely to be the victim. The thing is, Duran, he likes killing people because he likes to win. There are lots of people who like killing people. You can meet them. There are jobs where you kill people, and we like those jobs. And I work with a lot of those people, by the way, and I like them a lot. But then occasionally,
what are you talking about
really
right now?
Excited. Soldiers. There's a difference between duty and enjoying murder, but you sort of you can get people who enjoy one and the other, and you can get and what do you do about that? How do you handle that? So one of my favorite parts is when she comes out of the Mordenach trance, and she's like, and Kira's like, so Duran wasn't evil, and Dax is like, no, he's he's extremely evil.
Yeah, actually, since you've talked about it, I want to ask about that, because this Mordenach thing, this ritual to find out like how a previous host died, I thought that was really interesting to kind of add to the Trill myth. I felt like it fit with them as well, because I feel like in a certain way the Triller a bit obsessed with death, right? Like,
right.
Death leads to another host and more. It's almost like, in a way, they never say it this way, but it's almost like a positive thing. Like, okay, the memories will go on and you'll be more wise in the next lifetime and all that. So that there's this ritual to find out about the death I thought was interesting. I thought the house was really creepy, where they just go into this house and it's just like, okay, I'm going to strap you to this table. And so tell about like what kind of went into creating that.
Sure. Well, so the thing about the Trill that really strikes me is how sacred symbiosis is to them. And it's like it's such a huge deal. And as a regular person, I normally think I don't want to induct anybody else into my own personality, much less 8 or 9 other people. But you start to ask yourself, why is it that they're going for this? Why is it so important to them to control who becomes, who goes into symbiosis and who doesn't? Why do they get to, why do they care so much about that? And then I started to think, well, how much faster would Zephram Cochrane have appeared, if Einstein died and gave his symbiont to Grace Hopper? Right? Like, holy shit. Sorry. I can't say that. Sorry. But think about just those two people, and if you could start sort of curating a post-death audience or a post-death group of people, you could really start to guide the development of a civilization. Death is the largest obstacle to the development of a civilization. Now, flip side, and this is something that the series does not seem to address, is that means that one governmental organization is responsible for the curve of Trill civilization.
Yeah.
It's eugenics.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. Like for me, like when I was first seeing Deep Space Nine, I'm like, wow, these Trill are really fascinating, and they have all these lifetimes and things continue on. And I guess I could see kind of some of the benefits of it. You can feel like, okay, who I am is going to continue on. You get some kind of immortality, and you can keep contributing to society like long after your death. But then I was also like, would I want, the next person to know like all of my memories and the intimate stuff that I've done and like all the mistakes? Like, would I really want to give that to someone? I think the answer was like, no, I really don't. So why would somebody go with this? They're willing to kind of take that risk or be okay with that.
The level of arrogance involved in that statement, in that decision, right? Like,
yeah,
I think my life is worth imprinting on someone else's.
Right. And in addition, like from the series and in this book, you have this rite of emergence where you can bring out somebody's personality. So it's kind of like they're there in front of you, even though they've been dead for a long time. So, I find it fascinating, but I keep thinking like, no, I don't think I would want to do that. That's really, really weird.
No,
like,
absolutely.
In a bad way.
And what Curzon did was abominable and facilitated by that system.
Yeah.
If you secretly love someone and you sexually harass them out of a program and okay, he felt bad about it and he got her back in. That's awesome. Like, before they merged, he should have said, hey, I have something to talk about.
Yeah, and I like that at the very end of the book, they do kind of have that conversation, right, where they get I think he gets to say like, okay, I can understand that, and I'm really sorry about that. So I thought that was
he needs to acknowledge how he did a bad thing, and he doesn't do that in the show.
Yeah.
Well, but now, if we take this novel, it's kind of like he did do it during the show.
Right. Well, that's the great thing about novels, though, is you can come in and we can sort of say that this happened. Well, that was something else that was really hard that's hard to do when you're writing in the middle of a show, is that we know where all the characters are going to end up, not just physically, but emotionally. And so, like, when you have a novel that centers around one character, it's like, okay, well, what, did Jadzia just have some life-changing experience over the weekend and then never talk about it again? And so it was important to me to come up with a storyline that she would feel like she was resolving.
So Alex, I know we've talked a lot about the book and gotten into kind of some of the details, but is there anything else that you want to kind of say about the book that you haven't already?
Oh my word, no! I think we've covered all the pretty heavy messages.
Covered a lot.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's been really great having you on. I hope our listeners will pick up this book, this Deep Space Nine book called Revenant. I know that I really enjoyed it. Let our listeners know where they can find you online, and if there's any current and upcoming work that you wanted to mention.
Sure. Yes. Well, you can find me online at Alex R. White Books on Twitter. You can also, Alex White Books on Twitter, Alex White Books. And you can go to alexrwhite.com if you want to go to my website, where you can also find all the content warnings on my books if you're interested. And any bookstore on Earth you want to go to for the Salvagers, starting with A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe, or either of my Alien books, Alien the Cold Forge or Alien into Charybdis. And July of this year, I have a new trilogy kicking off, Giant Robots in Space, called August Kitco and the Mechas from Space.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much again for taking the time to talk about this book. We really appreciate it. And we hope that there will be more Star Trek novels in your future.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
it.
Okay. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye. Okay, listeners, hope you enjoyed our interview with Alex White for the Deep Space Nine book, Revenant. This is kind of a bonus episode, so you know where to reach us, and we'll just say, on the next episode, we will be talking about Episode 8 of Season 1 of Prodigy, which I think I did see the title of First Contact. That's with a dash between con and tact. So now we've had many variations on the word First Contact in titles. Anyway,
I'm looking forward to the 10th episode called Nemesis.
Nemesis? Yeah, that would be really great. Or maybe like First, Second Contact or Second, Third Contact or something. Anyway, until then, listeners, peace and long life.
This has been a production of MTMR Media Works.